Welcome back. This week, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said he'll be stepping aside after a tumultuous 2-year stint. But consider this. The next PM will be the 8th in 10 years. So what does that say about UK politics and the effect it will have here in the U.S.? Victoria Churchill is the U.S. political reporter for the Daily Mail. She's up late with me tonight here on the Final Five. Hey, good to see you again.
Always great to be on with you, Jim. Thanks so much for having me back.
Okay, I wanted to have you on because you do know quite a bit about UK politics. I want to talk about this first and foremost. 2 years ago, people saw Keir Starmer come into power. There was a big Labour landslide victory. People thought that was the sign that there was going to be some sort of global political shift. It clearly didn't play out. Why is Keir Starmer going away so soon?
Well, I think he has had a lot of issues, both domestically and internationally. Of course, you know, when you talk about the relationship with the U.S., he hasn't had the best relationship with President Trump. You saw the king here just a few weeks ago, you know, trying to mend some of that relationship between the U.K. and the U.S. that Trump and Starmer haven't had. But he's also had a lot of issues domestically. For example, you look at, you know, one issue that's been quite prevalent over in the U.K. is the issue of immigration, quite prevalent just like it has been in the U.S. But there they've had a lot of frustration where, you know, it used to be kind of this idea that immigration enforcement was really only coming from the right-wing political parties, whether that be the Reform Party or the Conservatives. Mm-hmm. But Labour's really had to embrace a lot of stringent on immigration policies. They've also had issues with, you may have heard, the rape gangs. And so, you know, it's really a plethora of issues that he's had to deal with that he hasn't handled very well. And then, of course, you know, we've talked a number of times about the Epstein files. Yeah. His selection of Peter Mandelson was definitely not one of his brightest moments as well. Peter Mandelson, the ambassador to the U.S., and that obviously, we talked quite a bit about that right around the time that the Prince Andrew was swept up in that whole controversy as well. I want to talk about, we mentioned there will be, the next prime minister will be the 8th in 10 years. You know, in terms of stability in politics, I mean, it's a different system. Parliamentary system is far different than what we see here in the U.S. But what does that say about voters in the UK and the UK populace and the lack of stability in leadership? I mean, I think it really tells us as Americans how important our own system of governance is, which, of course, we have, you know, the Senate, which is supposed to be the institution, versus the House is more subject to the political whims of the day, if you will, you know, with having the elections every 2 years. You know, I think we're seeing that play out on Capitol Hill here just this very week. But then I think that also goes to show that in that parliamentary system, when there's frustration amongst the people, those elected representatives, I think, feel a little bit more of a tie maybe back to their constituency, because you also have all of your cabinet ministers in the US, in the UK are elected members of parliament as well.
I'm curious, as we look ahead here, there's been so much talk about who the next prime minister would be, and there's a guy named Andy Burnham who was the former mayor of Manchester, who appears poised to become the next prime minister. What do we know about him? And granted, it's not going to be a change in political party. Would he have any different relationship with President Trump and the White House?
Well, it seems like Trump already doesn't like him. I think he called him an extremist or a leftist on social media just in the last 24 hours. So, you know, again, we were talking about that relationship between the UK and the US. I don't think Trump would be more willing to work with Burnham than he has been with Starmer. But, you know, Burnham, he has just come into Westminster. He won what's called in the UK a by-election. So it's the equivalent of a special election here in the US. And so, you know, he's got a lot of momentum with him in that, you know, with media attention. Again, we even see it with our own members of Congress. A lot of the times if they have a special election that's a lot of money is spent, that kind of brings a lot of media attention. And so I think that's part of the reason why Burnham's been able to pick up that attention. But then, of course, we also have other potential figures like Wes Streeting. He was a cabinet minister in Starmer's cabinet who resigned from his cabinet post, you know, to potentially challenge him. Yeah. And now he's not going to be challenging him, but he may launch his own bid for PM as well.
So it just seems like everybody who had backed Starmer, they sort of jumped off his wagon once it appeared that his leadership was in doubt.
Absolutely.
All right, Victoria Churchill joining us here tonight on the Final Five. Hey, I appreciate it. I mean, this is one of those things where it's you know, it's across the pond, but there's so many effects we would see here in the U.S. I wanted to get a sense of that tonight. We always appreciate you joining us. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much. See you next time.
You got it. Final Five is back after this.